We've been talking a lot this week about this newly released list of states and the tax burdens for each state, the 2015 State Business Tax Climate Index, which was just released earlier this week. North Carolina was ranked 44th in the country in terms of the favorability for the state tax burden. And now, after the General Assembly enacted some legislation last year and changed, went through the tax reform package that, of course, we talked ad nauseum about last year, and of course, some of the changes did not get enacted. I know that Senator Bob Rucho wanted zero income tax in the state of North Carolina, and they discovered that that wasn't possible. They were going to have to take baby steps first, but apparently the first step they took was more than a baby step. North Carolina went from 44th in the nation in terms of tax favorability rating to 16th in the nation, jumping 28 spots from its previous ranking last October. Here to talk about that, from Johnson and Wales University, Professor Stewart Dompe on the telephone. Good morning, Professor Dompe. How are you?
Very good. Thank you for having me.
Now, where are you located, sir?
I'm located in Charlotte.
Okay, you are in Charlotte. This is so you're at that Johnson and Wales. You're right next to the hotel where I stay when I go to the Panthers games, by the way.
Oh yeah, and there's a home game tonight. So
that's
it's
right.
Crowded.
That Charlotte will be buzzing. And by the way, I think everybody was excited about the Hornets because they sold out last night and had a great start to the new season. So a lot of good stuff happening in Charlotte, including less taxes. Are we really going to pay a lot less tax in the state of North Carolina if you're a North Carolina citizen now?
Oh yeah, the individual rate dropped from around 7 3/4 to a flat rate of 5 3/4. So that's a 2-point drop. That's doing pretty good, and it's a simplified drop too. It's a flat tax, and I don't know about you, but every time I have to fill out my taxes, I always break out the calculator and I start scratching my head. And I'm an economist, so I really feel for people that have to go down to H&R Block and bring in all this specialized help to make sure they get their forms in order.
The legislature said that they had a goal of reducing the tax burden on individuals paying income taxes, but they also wanted to reduce the burden on the corporate tax. We had one of the highest corporate taxes in the southeastern United States. Did they do that?
They did. They dropped it from almost 7% down to 5%, so almost a 2-point drop. So that's pretty significant. Corporations have a choice of where they can operate. We've heard a lot about corporate inversion in the news, Burger King buying out Tim Hortons so they can lower their tax burden by being located in Canada. We have corporate inversion all the time in America where companies can change states. So being very competitive about where you can locate and what local states are offering matters a lot in terms of employment and jobs.
And the other tax that people have felt was very problematic in North Carolina was the estate tax when someone dies and passes on their inheritance to their heirs. How did we fare with that? Did that get a favorable nod from you folks as well?
Oh yeah, the estate tax got eliminated. And one thing that has to be remembered here is that the estate tax does a really poor job of generating funds. The only people that benefit from the estate tax are estate planners and accountants. Pretty much if you want to pass money on to your relatives, you got to bring in your legal team, do a little rain dance, and you'll get your money through. But it's a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of cost.
So in North Carolina now there is no estate tax. There's still a federal estate tax, right?
Correct.
But in North Carolina, you pay no tax. It's no what everybody calls the death tax. When when your parents die or grandparents and they want to pass on money to the children or the grandchildren, there's no tax from North Carolina on that any longer.
That's correct, and it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
As I just said, it's that's hard enough to deal with, and then having to bring in accountants and lawyers to try to untangle the whole mess. There's no sense in that.
So you're down there in Charlotte, and you're no doubt very aware of Senator Bob Rucho, who was the kind of architect of the first shot at trying to reform North Carolina taxes in the General Assembly last year. He got very frustrated because he wanted no tax. He wanted no North Carolina income tax. And, of course, some of our neighboring states, Tennessee, doesn't have an income tax any longer. Florida doesn't have an income tax. I think Texas has eliminated theirs. But North Carolina did not quite get there this time around. And from what we hear, just reading a story in the newspaper this morning, the governor's asking community colleges to kind of be on alert to maybe take some more cuts because the money coming into the state is coming in pretty slowly because of these tax cuts. So I guess it made sense not to go the full route at this point and totally eliminate income tax. Is that a fair statement?
I believe that's a fair statement. My understanding is they're trying to phase it in slowly to try to get their spending more in line with their revenues. One of the big things, though, is that low taxes are really important for generating new jobs. Entrepreneurs, small businesses, these are the job creators of America. So at Johnson & Wales, I tend to teach a lot of culinary students. These are people that want to go out there and open their own restaurant. They spend all their time learning about how to bake souffles and do all these fancy things like making sugar art and the like. And, it sort of breaks my heart when I say, okay, well, you're going to need a lawyer to help with your business plan. You're going to need to bring in the accountants. You're going to have to go through a lot of work to make sure your forms are in order. And so by lowering the burden, not only just the tax burden, but the amount of time and effort it takes to be in compliance with the state, these are all really important ways to promote job growth and eventually get our revenues up.
No doubt about it. So was it surprising to you to see that North Carolina had jumped all the way from 44th in the country to 16th? That's a huge jump.
Oh, yeah. And it just goes to show that when the state government decides to take growth in the economy seriously, you can actually have some good results. This has been tremendous. North Carolina has suffered a lot from the housing bubble and the recession we just had. Traditionally had higher unemployment rates than the rest of the nation. So we're just starting to get back out of that now, and this is definitely a step in the right direction.
The key findings of this state tax climate index were that the 10 most competitive states were, number one, we talked about this earlier in the week, Wyoming. Nobody wants to live in Wyoming. South Dakota, Nevada, Alaska, Florida, Montana, New Hampshire, Indiana, Utah, and Texas. The 10 least competitive states are New Jersey, New York, California, Minnesota, Vermont, Rhode Island, Ohio, Wisconsin, Connecticut, and Ohio. Now, I know, Dr. Dompe, you're an academic. You're not a politician, but it seems curious to me that all those states at the top are now being run by Republicans and all those at the bottom are being run by Democrats.
Yeah, that is something to notice there.
When you ask an academic a question like that, you get that pregnant pause. But I mean, it's a fact, is it not?
Yeah, and there's still hope for all those states at the bottom too. They just have to actually get serious about it. One thing that's happened in California is that we won't always have Silicon Valley be there. Basically, if you're a smart young person with a laptop, you can work anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
And so it's going to become more attractive for people just to hop the state line and go over to Nevada. I mean, it's right there next door.
And getting spending, you mentioned getting spending in line, which is what you got to do if you got less tax revenue coming in. It's interesting to me that, people need to remember, too, that during the period of time that these taxes have been lowered, you also have to remember that North Carolina paid back to the federal government. When Governor McCrory took over as governor in 2012, early 2013, the state of North Carolina owed the federal government $2.5 billion in unemployment insurance money. And we now have gotten that down to $500 million, which is a heck of a thing in less than 2 years. So there's been a lot accomplished under the Republicans, I think, in the state of North Carolina. And when people start screaming about what's happening with regard to whether the Republicans are doing a good job running the state or not, I mean, it is undeniable that fiscally North Carolina has become a much better state in the last 2 or 3 years. Is that fair?
Yeah, they've been doing a great job, and they will eventually see the benefits of lowering taxes. One of the things that people seem to forget, and I don't know why they do this, but if we talk about tobacco taxes, the entire point of the tobacco tax is to raise prices and get people to buy less cigarettes.
Yeah.
Well, the same thing happens at a state level. If you have high state taxes, guess what? People will buy less stuff, and the businesses in the state will sell less. And that's a recipe for really bad economic times.
That's a great analogy. I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're right. The only reason they ever raised the tax on cigarette and beer is try to get people to stop using it. And so,
Exactly.
they use that strategy, but then, when they're raising taxes and doing all these giveaway programs, they go, oh, no, that's not going to hurt the economy. So, all right. Well, it's great hearing from you, and we appreciate you being on with